Welcome to Crossroads Callings. I am your host, Chimere Brown, and today's guest is a true master of the pivot, someone whose life story is not defined by straight lines, but by bold, purposeful reinvention.
Wow.
I am here with Jarrett, a veteran turned executive from the U.S. Air Force to leading high-impact marketing campaigns for billion-dollar brands. Jesse, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. This is awesome.
I'm so honored that you're here.
I'm honored, honestly. Like the fact that I get to be a part of this and to be a part of what you're building. Now I feel really, really blessed. I'm glad we were able to work it out, and the logistics and everything made sense. So this is great.
I will say this. I am one of those people. You said, "Hey, Chimere, I would love to support you any way I can." I was like, "Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Come on my show." You're like, "Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Let's get this locked in." So it's something about someone saying they're going to support you and actually actionably supporting you. So yeah. I appreciate you for being like a man of your word and just showing up for me today. So
absolutely, definitely, especially in Chicago, right? There's sometimes you do get a lot of that, like Hollywood, like yeah, we'll do lunch, right? And unfortunately, like it never. And of course, you give people all the grace in the world, but for I'm in the space in life where it's like, to your point, trying to be impeccable with my word. And if I say I'm going to be somewhere or do something, like I'm going to do it. So like, even from the terms of like when people say, oh I'll pray for you. Like I got a little prayer journal where I a little notes app in my thing where I'll make that, jot it down to make sure, because as life goes, sometimes you forget things. So yeah, I definitely, when you shared what you were doing and what you were building and part of your pivot, I thought it was amazing. And I was like, yeah, I'm any way that I could be a part of it and support it. So I'm glad that you took me up on it and that we're here.
Yeah, this is going to be a wonderful conversation. I feel it in my bones. Crossroads Callings, it starts now. Okay, Jesse, so yep. I ask all of my guests to give me 1 to 2 crossroad moments that we can speak to during our conversation. But you have a mission and a statement that stood out to me that was in your bio. The first of which was that you had a mission to help others move from survival mode to purpose mode, transforming crossroads to beginnings. And then you follow that up by saying, sometimes your breakdown is just a breakthrough in disguise. And I'm going to say that again because that stuck with me. Sometimes your breakdown is just a breakthrough in disguise. How does that mission and that statement relate to your personal journey and where you are now in life?
So, I think part of my purpose has always been to be a helper, a facilitator. I think even by virtue of the career that I decided to go into after the military, working in advertising, a space where traditionally there weren't a lot of Black talent, especially on the account and the account leadership side of things, especially not a lot of Black male talent. And so a lot of my purpose within that industry was really not only in doing good work, but also reaching back and trying to get as many of me as possible into that space. It was one of those things as an industry, something that we recognize. It was like unfortunately, it's weird because in advertising, having diverse voices, having kind of diverse thought is almost a competitive advantage. But unfortunately, based on you had legacy agencies and a number of things where you find yourself with somewhat of a homogeneous type of talent pool. And so part of my thing is always to be a helper. And then with that, and in working with junior talent, a lot of times you'd realize not only just putting them in position, but really kind of working with them, getting to know them, and trying to impart upon them just their strength and being able to kind of speak life into them, trying to really work with them to just put them in positions to win. And a lot of times what I would see is, people would be doubting themselves or imposter syndrome, right? Because a lot of times they would find themselves in these corporate environments and not really know how to maneuver or what to do. And then, many a times I would see the breakdown, right? And see them just not get down on themselves and just not feel confident. And so being able to kind of take that conference and pull them aside and kind of, hey, let's retool this. Let's rethink about, yeah, you may not necessarily come from where all these other people come from, but that is in really in part of your superpower and your strength, and the fact that you have a different point of view that you can share, right? Learning the vernacular and learning the language, that's one piece. But then once you do that and you're able to articulate it and then be able to share it in a way that we can then take it and run with it, I found to be, once they were given that little piece, they pretty much off to the races after that point. And it was a pleasure just to be able to see people grow and thrive and then go on to do just other cool things, even beyond just advertising. I have some mentees who have gone to, work on in entertainment and music and some other places. So yeah, really it's about being able to, in learning that lesson, because I've gone through the situation of being broken down, right? Yeah. I've been in scenarios and situations where it felt perilous. It felt, even in moments where like my body felt like my body failed me. And to be able to kind of rebound and to now, fast forward to like now I'm a bit of an endurance athlete, right? And so really, it really is sometimes that breaking moment is the moment to really stay still and learn the lesson. And then that really does become your breakthrough to the next chapter and what it is you need to go accomplish.
I want to get into your story because I realize that you're able to mentor others on how to be their best self regardless of difference and like hone that and make that their superpower because you've had to do that yourself. Yeah. And you have an immigration story. Yeah. We could be cousins. You migrated from Jamaica at 13. My mother actually migrated from Jamaica around the same time. She was actually 12.
Do you know about which parts from where?
Yeah, she's from Kingston.
Okay, yeah, we're from we're from Clarendon, Maypen to be exact. Yeah.
Okay. Well, distant cousins.
Yeah.
But the time that she migrated was 70s.
Okay.
And just the perception of like Jamaicans and the accent, it was just different things. Yeah. And then you migrated maybe 90s, early 2000s?
Yeah, 99, early 2000s. Yep.
I want you to just share your story, and then from there we'll segue because there's a lot happening around that now. Yeah. That I would just like to unpack with you.
Indeed. So a part of that story was, what's interesting is, was actually born here in the States, and then my mom made a decision, because come from a family of entrepreneurs, to repatriate back to Jamaica, right? Okay. And so and essentially so you grew up here for, kindergarten, first grade and that type of thing. And then your mom comes and is like, okay, guys, so we're packing up and we're going back to this place that you've heard of. Yeah. I've heard of Jamaica, right? Right. And maybe has visited once or twice as a kid, but okay, but now we're going to go live there, right? And so we go back, and then classic kind of fish out of the water story, right? It's a very different system, especially, they follow a more Brit inspired as a member of the Commonwealth, right? So so even just going to school, and we're here, it was a lot of flashcards and characters, and everything is colorful. There it's kind of rote memorization and learning your times tables, and so at first when I got there, I didn't necessarily thrive. Like there was a bit of an adjustment. But fortunately, my mom was very invested in our education and kind of did everything she could to provide the resources. And so she was able to kind of get me some of the extra help. But then I had a teacher, Miss Johnson Morgan, who kind of then, at a certain point, I kind of started to doubt myself, but then she provided, as kind of great teachers do, that spark that like, actually, no, you are smart, right? And provided that little bit of encouragement to say that, okay, you can do this. And then she took the time to give me just a little bit of extra hand holding. And from there I blossomed. Like I really took on the identity of a smart student and was able to do all the things. I'm not sure if in Jamaica they have this thing called school challenge quiz.
Yeah.
Right. So I was able to do that. I was able to pass a common entrance exam off the first try, like at 11.
Okay.
Yeah. Went to the high school of my choice. And so it was just that just goes to show the power of encouragement and the power of being able to speak life into people.
Yeah.
And the stories we tell ourselves. Because up until that point, I thought I was just a bad student. Just realizing, actually, no, you just needed a little bit of some tools. And come to find out, it really was some early case of ADHD. Like, but again, back then, no one knew that wasn't like a thing, right? But come to find out, that's kind of what it was. And some of those techniques and things that she kind of shared with me at the time are still things that they would recommend and suggest for people now. But just goes to show, like, she was in her purpose for sure as far as what she was doing. She was a lifelong educator, to the point that I still remember her name to this day.
Right.
And so, so did that and really thrived. And then all of that to then go right around 13 to say, hey guys, we're going back to the States. Like,
what prompted that transition? Because it seems abrupt.
Yeah, some of it was personal life stuff on my mom's end. Some of it was for me. I'm growing up and I'm seeing the internet take hold, and part of me wanted to be in the space. So I was kind of with it at that age. I was kind of like for the move. But then once we got here, it was kind of very much a, it was like Fresh Prince in reverse.
Okay.
Right. So in Jamaica, we had a pretty comfortable lifestyle. My grandparents had been there and established, and, was very well respected in our parish where we lived, to the point where, like, oh, you're such and such's grandson. So you'd get some of that kind of, covering. And then to come back to the States, although at first very excited about it, but then we get here and it's like different. So now we land in West Palm Beach, Florida. And then, it sounds great. And West Palm Beach, don't get me wrong, it's a great place to grow up, but there's Palm Beach and then there's West Palm Beach, right? And then West Palm is kind of where everyone who supports, the Palm Beach Island millionaires, that's where they live. And then with any city, there's good parts and there's bad parts.
I can imagine. It's where the tourists, what they see, and then how people really live.
Exactly. So we landed a place with some other immigrants, some other Jamaicans, Haitians. And that was very much an awakening of, because up until that point, a lot of my frame of reference for just America was like Saved by the Bell, right? Like, as far as I'm thinking about, like, what American,
like TV,
what high school is. So no real, but then you get there and it's like, yo, what's a jit? Like, what is a jit? I had no idea. So very fresh off the boat, just like no real sense of like what it was. And then now you're kind of thrown into this environment. But I think what it revealed to me was a power of to be able to, I was committed to assimilate. I was just like, all right, I do not want to be the odd man out. Like, I didn't want to draw a whole lot of attention to myself. So I was able to quickly, like, my accent, I got to the point where I could turn it on and off. And don't get me wrong, I would hang out with all the other Jamaicans because there was some safety and a sense of familiarity with them as a kid growing up. And I guess in my high school. So I would hang out with them, but outside of that, I got really good at being able to turn that on and off, and really good at being able to survey just the ecosystem that is the American high school, right? And figuring out, what are people listening to? What are they watching? Okay, how are people dressing? Okay, what's brands? Okay, what does that mean? And being able to identify like those little details to signify like who's who in the pecking order, right? We used to have a thing back, if it was your birthday, like the amount of balloons that you would get during the day. Those days, that was like a signifier of a thing, right? And so just being able to quickly pick up on a lot of those cues, and then to be able to navigate it to the point where it's like, all right, I just got really cool with being cool with everybody, right? And so I wouldn't necessarily say I was like the most popular kid in high school or anything like that, but I found an ability to seamlessly move between groups and crews and cliques, right? So I would have a friend or two, the goth kid, I would have a friend or two, and it made kind of the high school thing good, where to the point where I was like nominated for like a homecoming. By the end of it, I was nominated for some type of homecoming court thing, right? So it was like, that to me was a testament of having figured it out to a degree. But that skill set and that ability to kind of observe and adapt and maneuver really stuck with me. Something that I would say I still deploy to this day as you maneuver into different circles and different places where I may not necessarily be the most familiar, but the ability to kind of break it down quickly is something that I value and still lean on.
Your story reminds me of my mother's story. She said something similar. When she came here, she became very observant. And she learned how to turn her accent on and off. And I feel like those two things remain true when people come here as children. It's really about acceptance. Nobody really wants to be the odd man out, even to the point where, like, her accent, I hear it when she's upset. And I can understand her. My grandmother sounds like she actually just got here and she's been here forever. But she didn't teach us patois. I picked it up from my cousins, and they taught me all the bad words. And so has she taught me, like, and stuck to it. I think she was so caught up in just fitting in and finding her place. And I don't fault her for that. I actually have a lot of empathy, because when you're coming in so new, you just want to be, like you said, covered and protected. But right now, we're living in a place where immigrants aren't covered and aren't protected. And my mother is a news watcher, and seeing how ICE is essentially on like this witch hunt right now, it really planted a seed of fear in my mother, and it went like a domino effect throughout my family. And although my mother is a U.S. citizen and she has been on record for several years, I saw fear on her face. She has a filing system. For example, I can ask her for my birth certificate now, and she can go into her drawer. It looked like chaos to me, but she can find my birth certificate.
It's her system.
It's her system. Well, the fear was so prevalent that she didn't even know her own system. She ended up ransacking her house, looking for her papers. And that same energy went to my grandmother's house, my aunt's house, it just continued to go on. With the current state of America right now, how has that impacted you in your family?
I mean, some of the same, which I think is, unfortunately, that's kind of the point, right? The point is to kind of sow seeds of fear, to make people feel othered. But fortunately, I think we have done a good job of creating community. And I think the one thing, my mom, her church is a very big part of her life and an anchor point for her. And what I've kind of observed them is kind of turn in and kind of really turn towards each other. And so maybe one or two more extra Bible studies at night, right? But I think that is really part of the solve, is to lean into community and to lean into each other as much as you can, to keep each other covered. And really, what I've noticed is, just more check-ins, just being able to kind of not get so carried away with the minutia of day-to-day life, understanding like people are literally getting snatched off the streets. And so it's worth really kind of like doing the check-ins and just being a little bit more mindful. But again, trying not to be crippled by fear, because unfortunately that's something like I see even here in Chicago, where it's like normally at nights, I would do it like an evening walk. And then you would see, one of the beautiful things about the city is kind of the diversity of the city, and seeing just different families and different backgrounds, just kind of all enjoying the public spaces. And then slowly but surely, you just started to see that dwindle down, and it was eerie. It was one of those things that's like, this doesn't feel right. And this doesn't feel as if this should, to me, didn't feel like the goal. This to me can't feel like what they're actually trying to accomplish. And I think it's the antithesis of what they're trying to accomplish, is when you think about living in a city that's robust and living in a place that has community and feels lively, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just, goes to show, I mean, election have consequences. And so for nothing else, it's a motivator to stay engaged,
Yeah.
and to pay attention. So yeah, so for me and my family, it's really it has been about really turning to our faith, refusing and doing as much as we can to not allow them to be successful in what they're trying to do and sow seeds of fear in us. And then really pulling us closer together as a family by just encouraging us to kind of check in more and just kind of doing those little things is kind of how I think we're moving.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Could you explain the transition from West Palm Beach,
Yeah.
Florida to Chicago? Because
Sure.
you made a couple of moves, right?
Yeah.
It was from because you were born in, where were you born?
Born in Fort Lauderdale, then back to Jamaica, and then from Jamaica to West Palm.
Okay.
And then did high school there. It was great. And then I got to this standpoint of like, what's next? Again, immigrant parents, so didn't have a whole lot of direction as to like even help. Okay, how does one apply to go to university? How does one apply for scholarships? And, and then of course the idea of how are we going to finance these endeavors becomes a very real question, even though, again, I was a great student, didn't really have a lot of guidance in navigating that process. And then, at the time, right, this is circa 2003. So, 9/11 had happened a couple years before. So now we're in a landscape of just heightened patriotic fervor. Mm-hmm. And I think I got wrapped up in it. And I think part of me, I'm a big history buff. And so part of me felt like, okay, this was my generational defining thing. I think each generation has that thing. And I think I maybe got caught up in a little bit of that.
Do you think you immigrating here had a lot to do with that, though? And did that play any part in your desire to prove patriotism?
I think a little bit.
Okay.
I think kind of always dancing between the two cultures, like part of me wanted to have something cemented beyond just kind of the birth certificate to say like, I'm here and I've, paid dues to a certain degree. Mm-hmm. And it really was almost and beyond just almost the patriotism thing, I think even just as a man, it became almost this really interesting rite of passage for me because I joined right out of high school. It was the recruiter in my mom's house, like doing the whole thing, and me having to help him sell her on the idea because she wasn't going for it at first. But it was this really large step towards independence and just kind of me charting my own path, which was interesting. And what was wild about it is even when I started, I mean, my going from basic training into what we call the operational Air Force, that wasn't even a smooth ride either, just because I ended up getting hurt while I was in basic training. Oh, wow. Right? Okay. Yeah. So I ended up getting, I want to say about 3-4 weeks in, I got severe stress fractures. So it's essentially just small little cracks in your bone, right? Which made running impossible, which of course basic training, you need to be able to run, march, do all these things. And to the point where I got sidelined and then got sent to a little place called the 319th Squadron, which is essentially like land of misfit toys. Like that's what they said. That's what
I thought it was the infirmary.
So the infirmary was like kind of small, but like, so this was a place for like essentially, all right, we're going to put all of you people who have medical issues or whatever, or maybe you're out processing, maybe we pop you for drugs or whatever. So any issue person gets sent there while you figure out what it is that your issue is.
And your injury was your issue?
My injury was, because I couldn't stay on my regular flight because they were, as the weeks go on, the training progresses, it gets a little bit more intense. You're doing more things and I just physically couldn't do it. And what was weird, that was like the first time that I actually felt like my body failed me. Like it was like beyond, like I was mentally, I was there, I was gung-ho, I was all the way locked in when it came to just being an airman and wanting to do it. Like it became my goal. And then for this thing and I think part of it was I was so gung-ho about doing it. Like I was training to go and to be prepared to go to basic training. I probably was running. I probably wasn't following really great protocols and training to try to get ready for the Air Force, which probably exacerbated the injury. So by the time now I get there, and now you're in this environment of more stress, you're not getting rest and recuperation the way you're probably supposed to. Like my body was just like, no, I can't. So to the point where like I couldn't, I remember one time, and probably the lowest moment, I'm with my original flight, and then we're going somewhere. I think we were trying to go for chow, and I couldn't make my way down the stairs. Like, so my flight brothers had to literally like my arms around them, and they're walking me up and down the stairs. And finally, like, they told the TI, the technical instructor, like, hey, this guy's not gonna make it. So then of course sick call, and then they do the x-rays and stuff, and then they tell me what was going on. And then they sent me to 319th. And 319 was just weird because, again, it felt like this space of despair. It felt like this place of you didn't know whether or not you were going to make it out of there. You know, you saw people come through with a variety of injuries. I saw one guy, he had a neck brace. Another guy, like, it was just, like I said, the land of misfit toys. But fortunately, I had expressed just my desire to finish. And so I was able to do convalescent leave, where they allowed me to go home for a couple weeks to rest, recuperate, and then be able to come back, and was weird because when they do that, normally there's high rates of AWOL. People get home and they're like, I'm cool, right? But I was very much committed to finishing what I started.
Can we pause right there for a minute? Because I want to know about that time, because your mom didn't want you to go anyway. And just talk about what it felt like to essentially go home feeling somewhat, maybe like a little bit like a failure.
Defeated, for sure.
And then my mom I have a Jamaican mother too, and they're not nice with the "I told you so." So your body is broken, your spirit feels a little broken.
Absolutely.
How did you walk yourself back from that?
Honestly, thinking back to it, I think there was a part of me that wanted to not prove her right. Like, I was like, no, I can't. There's no way I'm not gonna give you the satisfaction, right? And like I said, it was a rite of passage. So part of me almost felt like my manhood was on the line, right? It was like, nah, I have to finish. And then I think part of me, I just had that dog in me where I was just like, I'd rather die before I allow this thing to really defeat me for real, which is, and was really hard because you're surrounded by the creature comforts of home. I'm home for that, the month. And then some friends are coming. She's cooking, she's doing all the things, but I was still committed. So I think what I was able to do, I didn't lean all the way into like the fact like I'm home. Like I kind of kept it on the low, like need to know type basis. It wasn't like because again, it wasn't a whole celebratory thing for me. So I was very much like, I'm home, but I'm here to get better. Right. And so I never really lost sight of the ultimate goal. And I felt, and it worked because I think kind of just being able to be in a less stressful environment and being able just to kind of take my time a little bit, and as far and doing some of the mobility things to just kind of get me back to fighting shape really helped. So then by the time my leave was up, I was active and ready and rearing to go.
Why did she want you there in the first place though?
Why didn't she? I'm her oldest son. Like, again.
Black mothers and their sons. I have to do another show on that. That's insane.
Global war on terror. So, like, and again, the idea of going to war was a very, very real possibility, right? Which I walked into it knowing that. But like I said, as a history, like, I looked at it as, and it's interesting. It's just like you create those bonds that are made in the foxhole, right? Those, shared adversity makes extremely strong bonds. And so for me, I didn't want to miss that. Like again, and having studied kind of the greatest generation, the people who came back from the world wars, realizing like, although a lot, you're putting your life on the line for your country, what it shapes you into and the type of man, and it kind of proves your resolve and your steel as a man. Part of me I didn't want my experience and my manhood to ever be in question, I guess is the idea when I was a kid, when I was young. And even hindsight, I look back at it, like I said, it's probably one of those decisions that I've made that has played dividends tenfold since I've done it. I would even say for people who don't know what they want to do, it's not a bad idea, politics aside, just because I think and then after I made it through and I got better and I was able to make my way out of the 319th and back into training, and I did it, and I went to Warrior Week, which is kind of like where, they do some simulations when you're like, doing ruck marches and convoys and that type of thing. And then they give you your airman coin, and which is essentially symbolizes, it's like 1 week before graduation, but this symbolizes, okay, you aren't officially an airman. Like there was like an emotional response, broke down a little bit because I just remembering just how much it took just to get to this point, right?
Yeah.
And so now going into the operational Air Force, kind of like I felt tested and proven. And so like, all right, tech school, boom, like I went all in. I was super, super committed. They have prefects or people who have like ropes, right? People who are just willing to take on extra responsibilities and extra positions of leadership within your squadron.
Okay.
I was with all of that, right? Inspections, killed all of those. Like, so then it just, again, proved to me that like I could do very difficult and hard things. I can come back from adversity. And so it kind of propelled me into my career within the Air Force. And then now, again, mind you, I'm 17.
Yeah.
And so.
And just 4 years prior, you was just getting assimilated to being here.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so like, that's a theme that I would say like has been kind of recurring, like going into a place and really kind of starting from zero, and then, from zero to hero, like, and then and rinse and repeat. That's kind of been my MO. So, which is kind of why now, like, I embrace new challenges. It's shown me not to really fear those things, or even if there is fear, to be able to look back at the things that I've already accomplished to hopefully help quell and quiet those a little bit, and to not lose sight of that. I think that's a lot of the work I'm doing now, is kind of really just sometimes it's being able to recall and think back to some of the battles that you've already won. Because in the moment, you can lose sight of those things a lot.
I want to stop there for a minute, because like the purpose of Crossroads and Callings is to give people how-tos to come out of their crossroads. And so saying recall to yourself, then I recall to myself, like what I've already been through. I want to walk through slowly kind of you have a comeback story, right? You came here from a different country. You went into the Air Force. You got injured during basic training, where that's where you're supposed to get through that to get to the Air Force.
Yep.
I want to just kind of restate and recap the aspects of your comeback that could help someone else. So you went back home. You decided mentally that I'm not going to stay here because you had something to prove. So it's mindset. But what are the other aspects that you feel are like pivotal to your comeback story that you think other people could pull from?
Mindset, for sure. I think that's honestly half the battle, because our world is really created by our minds and our self-talk and the things that we say to ourselves, as well as kind of faith. And even, as I say, I got a praying mom. And it's so funny because it's in a lot of those moments of despair where I didn't really have a lot of my own strength, or I didn't really have the answer. Really, it's being able to turn to my faith, and really lean into kind of those foundational blocks about the Lord and his plan for me, and the fact that, like, really don't worry, kind of really be, and then a place of rest, and a place of respite, to a place to really place your worries. And so, yeah, those two things, that's to me the 1-2 punch that has always kind of been the sauce, or been the recipe for my ability to recover from setbacks. And even to this day, like, just, in a season of pivoting from one industry to another and doing a transition, it's really led me to really lean into my faith and lean into my walk, and to get even more intimate with my Lord and my walk, and the practices, the day-to-day practices. And then that feeds into the mindset, right? So staying focused on the word, and when I'm feeding myself, feeds into the things that I think, and what I say about myself and to myself. And so those two things are kind of pivotal to, I think, in any real comeback. And so my faith is, I'm Christian. So, but whatever your particular faith is, I think just being able to lean on a superpower, a power that's bigger than yourself. Because the world can definitely throw challenges at you that feel like, again, just larger than life. And so just having a place that you can kind of go to for that restorative energy is everything.
You mentioned day-to-day practices. What are some of your day-to-day practices?
So nothing revolutionary, I would say, but so one, I'm a big fan in movement, really moving my body. So every day, 4:30, 5 o'clock, I'm over to LA Fitness.
Oh, you one of those.
Yeah. Okay. I like to get up and get to it, man. That's kind of been my thing. If the weather's good, you'll find me out by the lake getting a couple miles in. I'm a bit of an endurance athlete, so running races, that's always fun. But so day to day is moving my body, and then finding time for meditation and prayer is really important, just to settle me, to help get myself prepared for the day. And then taking just a moment to then organize my day is a big part of that. Like, literally me, notebook, calendar, and really jotting it out. So those are kind of the three big pillars in my morning. And music too. I'm a big music person, so being able to kind of listen to some cool chill R&B or something in the morning kind of really just helps put my mind in the right headspace to, like, be able to kind of go and well, sometimes it's R&B, but then other times it might be something else, something maybe a little bit more upbeat or something like that, whatever I'm listening to from the gym. But like, those are kind of the pieces, and then that's kind of just been my routine that has really kind of helped ground me. And even in the moments where, like I said, where there may be some self-doubt or something creeping in, to, like, okay, reset, relock in. And one other thing I do is, like I said, it's all about kind of like your diet and kind of what your intake in. Like, social media, I try to be very selective about who and what I listen to. And so I follow, like, influencers who, I try to avoid the thing where you put them on a pedestal, but there's more so like, okay, they're doing the thing that I do or I like to do, from maybe more of a fitness standpoint or something like that. And so sometimes I'll, watch that just to be inspired, get motivated, like, okay, cool. This is, they're my friend in my head. So, all right, cool. And they're going to the gym. I could go to the gym too. Right. So that's kind of, just another tool, a little shortcut that sometimes I'll use whenever, if I find myself waning from the routine or waning from the motivation, to kind of get back on track.
As you were going through these different transitions, your parents and your family, I believe you have a sibling, they were going through their transitions at the same time, because they also came here from Jamaica with you, and they had their own journeys. How did they support you as you were going through your formative years, meanwhile managing their own emotion of getting settled and establishing their own foundation, forging their own path, while they
Yeah.
have their only son also trying to forge his own path and get settled. Like, how did you guys work together, and how did maybe some of that dynamic may have worked against you?
So I'm the oldest, right?
Okay.
And so a lot of it was me kind of turning around and shit like, hey, y'all all right? Y'all cool, right? And so
Yeah.
I think that was a part of it as well, just kind of being the oldest. There's a lot of expectation for you to chart the path.
Right.
And so in doing that, it provided, like, the military just provided me a solid foundation so that I was, one, could provide context and provide guidance for them. So neither one of my siblings decided, none of them enlisted. They both decided to go to college route. But by that point in time, like, I had done it so that I can turn back and be like, okay, well, here's how you do it. You want to apply? Here's boom. Here's how you do it. Here's how you create a package. Luckily for them, though, I mean, I think when we came here, they were at ages where they were fairly malleable, and so they were able to adjust fairly quickly. My brother, he's a bit of a social butterfly, so he took to it like a fish to water. Like, he was able to get his little crew, and they, like, to this day, like, he's really good at that. Just like he's a just really good person, and he's a really good friend, and I just see that in the fact that he's had these, like, really strong lifelong relationships from, like, again, from when we first moved here. And my sister's a lot of that as well. She's, to her credit, she's also very strong in her faith, and so I see her really leaning into her her church, her Bible study. She's a great woman of faith, man. And so that really comes through. She's just soft spoken, and then just seeing how she goes about living her day-to-day life, you're seeing how she's been blessed. I think the one piece of it is me being in the military. There's what I'm trying to do now is doing a little bit of make good from the time that I was stationed in Arizona, right? And then I deployed. And then so there were these moments where you're missing some of these pivotal moments. And so you're just, the best you can do at the time was call home and try to do the check-ins. And, but I'm also navigating kind of interesting phases in my life as a young adult, right? So I'm probably not as focused on them as I probably should have been. But I think that just made for the fact that when I did move back home, like, I tried my best to really lock in. And so now we're all super tight. We talk fairly regularly. I try to be the best uncle as I can to my brother and his kids. And then, me and my sister, man, we just have a really, really great relationship where, like, even now we can talk about our faith and, what sermons we're watching. And, she's really great at recommending great Bible verses and things that, like, really speak to her, that she feels like I could use, and vice versa. So it's been interesting. Like I said, there is that little bit of anyone who has a loved one who's a service member. There's a bit of that departure and, like, detachment that happens because, especially if they're deployed or something like that.
How long were you deployed, and where were you?
I was deployed for 6 months, and I started in Iraq, and then I got forward deployed to Qatar.
Okay.
Yeah. So, which for the forward deployment was a God's blessing, honestly, because it was a less dangerous base, I would say. There was just less things happening at the time. But it was still, it had its challenges. It was being away from home. It was being in a foreign, environment, and just having to adjust to a new way, a new routine, a new way of life. But I would say it was great just because it removed a lot of distraction. And, there are people who I met out there and who I developed friendships with that still cool with to this day. Because, again, like, we're all in this very stressful environment. And so we lean on each other and turn to each other. So those silver lining.
You explained how, because I really want to understand, like, the through line between you being a serviceman to being in corporate. That's a leap to go from comeback kid, from recovery to now you're being deployed. Now you're in corporate and marketing. there's some things that we're missing here that I'm trying to make the math like really math and
Sure.
just see how you kind of bridge the gap between the two, because after being deployed, because how long were you in the air?
So
Air
I
Force?
ended up being in for like 4 solid years, which was interesting because that was the original plan, like a 4-year enlistment. But right around, like, I want to say year 3, I was like, oh, I kind of like this. Like, I was very much contemplating staying and doing it for the long haul. But unfortunately, let's say fortunately, at the time, the Air Force was going through, right around when I was supposed to re-enlist, they were going through this thing called force reshaping, which is essentially, hey, we have a lot of airmen, and so we need to move people around to some of the AFSCs or the jobs that we really need people in. Mm-hmm. And so at the time, they pretty much gave me an offer of, you either need to retrain to this new career field, or, we're going to process your separation. And I was like, I don't want to do the thing you guys want me to do. So I'm going to go. And so then I was kind of faced with the decision, okay, well, what's next?
Yeah.
Which then kind of forced me to really lean into like what my interests were, where I thought my talents would lie. In my career field within the Air Force I was an emergency actions controller, which essentially I was the conduit between higher command and like the base, right? Mm-hmm. And so I would report on base readiness, as well as when there was an emergency, being able to receive orders and authenticate orders from higher command, and I'm that conduit to kind of keep things moving. And so looking at like, okay, communications, like being able to effectively, communicate. I always thought myself to be a bit of a creative kid, and in fact, what I would notice, I would pay attention to different ads and different, commercials. And so it's like, all right. And then one day this is right before I got out. One day I'm on console, I'm on duty, and Boomerang comes on. Do you know that movie?
Yes.
Eddie Murphy, Halle Berry.
Was it Graham?
Marcus Graham, exactly. Yeah. Marcus Graham. And so I'm looking, I'm like, I could do that, right?
Okay, was it the role, or was it the kind of his everything? Because Marcus Graham was like fly, yes.
I think it was all of that. It was it was the depiction of the lifestyle, and I was like, yeah, that's kind of cool. And like he's in this corporate environment, and there's Black people, and it's just like I was like, I want that, essentially, right? Mm-hmm. And then that just became my next mission. So made my way from military, went back to undergrad, studied marketing with a concentration in advertising, and then like really had to hustle to find my way into the industry, because again, unfortunately, advertising can be really much at the time was kind of a closed door ecosystem, right? Like there really were no clear guides on how to make your way, especially if you weren't a creative. If you're a creative, there were some resources where you could on suggestions on how to create a book, right? Or they have these things called portfolio schools where you can go and create and do projects and works that you can then use to make your way within the industry. But if you wanted to do anything outside of that, like it was kind of a black box on like how you made your way in. Yeah. And so fortunately, that became the mission, and I was relentless as far as just networking, using my resources, telling people what it is I wanted to do. I got my very, very first agency job kind of through cold calling. I was like, all right, went old school with it, cold calling. And it was this very small mom and pop ad shop in North Palm Beach. But that job was primarily like they wanted me to do business development. Mm-hmm. So it's which really was like calling small and medium businesses and kind of pitching, letting them know our services. And it was cool. And it was great because it kind of got me very comfortable with talking to people and being able to talk to them about, at the bare minimum, about our service offerings and what is it that we can do, the early foundational principles of account management and being able to manage the account, etc. But it's just the scale just wasn't quite what I was looking for. And then I was able to Through my business fraternity, I had a brother who worked at one of the larger regional players in South Florida at Zimmerman. And yeah, she was able to kind of put in a good word for me and got me an interview. And I think from there, I was just able to kind of relay just my passion and my desire to want to enter the industry and do a great job. And then, yeah, the rest is history. And, what was great, Zimmerman was a really cool place because they were a retail oriented shop. And so their big thing was just about working with businesses and almost working with them as consultants, not just on the creative side, but also from a business side. And so that really encouraged us to really sharpen our business acumen. So like you'd be in the hallway and Jordan Zimmerman, the CEO of the company, he would stop you, be like, "Hey, what is your client trading at today?" Right? Like, so
kept you on your toes.
Keeping you on your toes. And the recommendations that we would offer weren't just wrapped or anchored in cool looking creative. It was creative that's going to move next day sales.
Do you think your experience with the Air Force prepared you for this?
Not at all, except for the discipline to stick with it and the discipline to, especially early on, it was just a lot of late nights. It was just kind of just grind, right? We didn't have AI, right? So like, there was a lot of going over spreadsheets and going over data analysis. And
tell me the grind story, because like, who helped you along the way? Because it wasn't maybe as linear as it seemed.
Yeah. The grind story. So fortunately, I think I think when you go into a place and you're able to communicate just your willingness or desire to do a really good job, and people can see that and they see the authenticity of it, people are willing to help you. And so fortunately, I was an early manager of mine, Audrey Mitchell, who she kind of had this reputation as being a ball buster at the time. She was just no nonsense. Like people would just she was a black lady. I think she went to Stanford. Wicked smart, just super smart, and she intimidated people, right? And then I would tell people like, "Oh, I'm on Audrey's team," and they'd be like, "Oh man, like what's up?
Like, are you okay?"
Yeah. And so she was great in the fact that there were no shortcuts, and she didn't let up on me just because we were both black. Like she really sat me down one day and was just like, "Hey, there are a couple." You being black in this industry, there are a couple of kind of things, uncomfortable truths that you're gonna face. Like one, you're going to be, what did she say? She's like, you're going to have to bear the results of work that wasn't your fault.
Yeah.
You're probably going to be blamed for something that wasn't your fault. You're going to be given maybe very highly unrealistic expectations. And none of it matters. You're still going to be expected to deliver.
Of course.
And so that kind of removed the woe is me or things aren't fair, like got that right up out of there. She used to do this thing in the morning. Every morning, she had this big whiteboard in her office. And every morning I would have to come in and write out the status of every account and every project, right? And then every night she would erase it. And so now every morning I'm coming in, I'm having to do this discipline and then being on top of it. And like she's quizzing you. So it's me standing on the board, and then it's her and maybe two account supervisors as they're asking me questions on the status of the account. What's the status of this project? What are things trading at that day? Status of the executive team for my client, CMO, those type of questions. And so just essentially getting into the discipline of staying on top of my game, coming in early if necessary, staying late if necessary. And so that early kind of hand-holding and kind of just orientation of the reality of the business, the reality of the expectation, combined with, I think, kind of just the general work ethic that I got from the Air Force, I think really helped propel me to, like I said, do some of the early grind work of, quality checking ads, QCing it, spell proofing, spell checking, quality checking, making sure that the offer matched up, the offer to this FSI matched up with the offer from the client, making sure that the expiration date was right, making sure that the media run dates are right. So these like little tedious details at the time.
She made you operate in excellence.
She made me operate in excellence. Yeah.
You had a lot of teachers on your journey because you mentioned Miss
Johnson Morgan, yeah.
Miss Johnson Morgan, and then as you're making your transition into corporate, you had another teacher show up. So when there's a student, it's some type of proverb. When there's a student, the teacher will show up.
Yeah.
To kind of help you along the way.
Yeah.
Now that you are where you are in your corporate career, I have a 2-part question.
Sure.
What do you think your purpose is at this point, and how these experiences for you help you now show up as the teacher for other people?
I think to that 2-part question, I think they're kind of one and the same. So a lot of my purpose really is to help, to teach, to bring the people who are behind me, to allow them entry into the industry as best as I can, to arm them with as much of the tools and the lessons that I've learned, while being very mindful of the fact that slightly from different generations now, right? Yes. Like the expectation is different. And so that's been an interesting ride working with our Gen Z.
With a completely digital background, whereas we have both analog and digital.
Yeah.
And that's just the small of it.
Yeah. It's been interesting in just, there are things where I think when I was coming up, there was almost this expectation of paying your dues. There was this, almost we romanticize the kind of the grunt work and then hopefully being able to ascend, where I think this generation is very comfortable. Like, well, we don't need to do that.
You're doing too much.
And part of me tips my hat to them. I get it, right? It's just like, I don't necessarily want to be in a position where I sit here and have to do all of this. Like, what is this actually teaching me? So I think they're really great at speaking truth to power and asking the hard question, like the why. Like, why are we doing this? And if you aren't really able to give them a really solid answer, I think they're really great at kind of seeing through the smoke screen. And you know what I mean? So I tip my hat to them, but I do think it's a part of my package, or part of what I have to offer them, is sharing with them the value in doing the hard work and allowing people to see you do the hard work, because it humanizes you and allows you to connect with them. I think there's something to be said. What was good about the paying the dues part, it showed like, all right, who's serious about this, right? Who are the people? Because if I did a thing, my expectation is that you should be able to do it too. You're not too good to do this thing that I did, right? Yes. And so being able to relay that message, I think, and just the importance of it and why it becomes this connective tissue, and it ingratiates you to the people who you will need later on in your career, right? Your network, the people and their experience in working with you pays dividends in the future, right? Everyone goes through layoffs. Everyone goes through pivots, or whether you want to move industries or whatever the case may be. Who you know and who you're able to call on, and all of that matters based on their work experience with you and what it was like working with you. So if you weren't a pleasure, if you weren't someone who people really enjoyed working with, it's like, that's going to be a little bit difficult for you in the future, right? So just being able to relay that message, and then really being able to speak life into people, so that, again, allowing them to know that, again, the breakdown, whatever issue, whether it's imposter syndrome or whatever the case may be, that is not the thing to define you. Again, that really can become your breakthrough. That really can become the thing to catapult you into what it is you're truly meant to be, and to never allow, again, this momentary kind of delay or the momentary disappointment to kind of derail you, or to plant that seed of doubt into who you really truly are made to be and what you're made to accomplish. Because some of the most our best icons really, like, life is really linear. Like, it's all about the curves. It's all about, I thought I was going to do this thing, but I end up doing this thing, and it's being okay and being down for the ride is the part that, like, not only do I try to kind of impart, but also try to live out in my day to day, and try not to, try to go along with the wave, man. Like,
where are you now in terms of your wave? Like, where do you aspire to be personally, professionally, and where are you now on that path to getting there?
I think I'm in the process of enjoying the process. Like,
okay.
The process is the goal, right? And being able to focus on, like I said, right now, it's been very much about refining and really getting into my walk with the Lord, and really getting into that, like, that spiritual walk, and acknowledging and really leaning into the fact that you are a work in progress. And so each day it's about just getting that 1% better.
Yeah.
And just really being comfortable with that piece, constantly growing, constantly evolving, and becoming the man that the moment demands, right? Reading a great book by Jason Williams. He's really good. But yeah, so just being kind of the idea of becoming the comprehensive man. And so relearning kind of bad habits, or kind of getting away from bad habits and things that kind of kept me boxed in, and to maybe one dimensional.
Yeah, for example.
Being able to, just even from an emotional standpoint, being able to emote a little bit more, right? Yeah. Being able to be a nurturer, being able to, the fact that, like, a fighter and a gentleman can both exist within the same person.
Yes, that's what you've demonstrated.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you've been in the Air Force, you've been deployed, but you're showing up very genuinely right now, professionally right now. So it's a yes. It's a yes and.
Yes and. Exactly. Like, working on being a better son, a better partner, a better brother, right? And so just, there are times where I think at different phases where I was all, like I shared with you, just very focused on the mission at hand, very focused on this goal, making it through basic, cool, making it into advertising. So again, in a lot of those moments, I was just kind of very much tunnel vision focused on those things, where I think maybe I let relationships, I probably wasn't as great in relationships in those moments, in that point in time. In working on advancing my career, once I got here to Chicago, probably wasn't the best at supporting some relationships that I had at the time.
Was that work that brought you here to Chicago?
Yeah, work is what brought me here to Chicago. I had the opportunity to work at Burrell Communications, which is a historic, storied ad agency started by Tom Burrell. So one of the first Black ad agencies ever. And so that was kind of a monumental moment for me too. It was like working at a place that I read about in my textbooks was like a big deal for me. But during that time, like in that time and coming here, I was so focused on just doing that, like everything else kind of fell by the wayside. And so now the focus and the journey is about allowing all of those things to kind of coexist, being able to kind of juggle, and then being able to be okay with what I struggled with in the past, of in moments of failure, like, how do I deal with that? How do I cope with that? How do I, again, not allow the certain words to myself shift into a place that is toxic or kind of non-healthy, right? So how do I kind of stay on the path where, again, you're focused on getting 1% better each day? How do I stay on the path of still showing up, even though I may not necessarily feel the best, but still being able to communicate that to my person, my partner, my family and friends, like, hey, I'm still hurting, but I'm still trying to show up, and here's how I can show up, and that may ebb and flow, and to not kill myself in the fact that I may not necessarily be able to show up in that particular way, because I'm dealing with stuff as well. So that's...
Could you really quickly unpack how your journey from getting to point A to point B, because you mentioned tunnel vision and impacting your relationships. I understand what it means to be hyper focused.
Yeah.
Did you lose friends during that time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were you able to recover?
Some, yeah, I think because some people kind of get it and they were like, all right, cool, season, like, hey,
Yeah,
right now might not
leaving.
be our time.
Yeah.
Lost relationships, right?
Yeah.
People was like, hey, like what I need, and it's no love lost for real. Whereas like, hey, you can't really show up as who and what I need you to be in this moment, or, hey, I want this relationship to be on just this trajectory, and I'm not seeing it from you because, like in many a situation, it was very clear, like if it's between you and the career, it's gonna be the career, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But now, fortunately, I think I've kind of evolved beyond that to realize like that's great, but career is great and it provides a great sense of accomplishment and kind of structure and purpose for people, but that is not where my treasure lies. Like,
Yes.
I
And
enjoy
finding the balance.
yeah
Yeah.
and it's not even really a balance, honestly. I think I'm coming to find that the older I get, that is my true treasure is your family, and it is your relationships.
Yes.
It is, I shared with you a little bit more, like going through real life changes, get to a point where like parents die,
Yeah.
family members die, like where people start getting really weird diagnoses, right? And so it really helps bring life into focus into what's really, really, really important. And it sounds cliche, and I know, but it's cliche for a reason. Like, it really does zero you in on what's really and truly important. And then, even they say people, there are studies that show like people who have good and strong relationships, they live longer, they have just better quality of life than people. And, I think unfortunately we're in this kind of epidemic of men. We're in this epidemic where people are kind of just white knuckling life and going through life by themselves and going through life especially men, the lonely epidemic. And so what I've been trying to do is, being able to combine this idea of kind of the comprehensive man and finding community. And so me and some of my guys, we've come together to create this little thing called Sons of Cyrene, where it's just like, hey, we're going to come together. It's small, essentially think of it like as a small men's group. But we're able to come together, focus on the word, really be able to work and dissect the word each, every other week or so, as well as like just support each other and like what people are going through in life as it happens, and just to kind of be either a sounding board, a shoulder to cry on, or sometimes it's a kick in the butt, like, hey, bro, you know what I mean? It's some level of accountability, but just doing and starting small to be the change that you want to see. And as far as like just being able to show up differently for the people in your life that you say you love. And, for me, it's something that we've started fairly recent, but it's already kind of had a fairly good impact from a standpoint of being able to, I know that there's this group of men that I can kind of turn to and talk to about whatever, who are like-minded, who are going to try their best to provide counsel from the Word of God, but still not judge, and still, because again, I think when we started it, we all kind of came very much like vulnerable from a standpoint of like, none of us are perfect in this walk, but we're all like the bare minimum is at least to try. And so as long as you're doing that piece, like, hey, we're going to support you. So I think that's kind of a mission, kind of a new thing that I've been working on, that I think is kind of bringing it all full circle, and just me trying to find balance, still relied on this personal evolution, while still pouring into people, helping people, and, doing my best to help combat this kind of epidemic that we're in, by trying to create and find and support community.
I'm going to recap your story because we're kind of nearing the end of our time.
Sure.
But, I mean, some of the tidbits I took away is that find your teachers. Because they are there to help you. When you're ready, they will show up. I also learned from you um, to build your village, because that's what you're doing. And take what you learn along your journey, you have to pour that into somebody else. And that's what you're doing with your sons of Siren, you called it.
Yeah.
You're pouring into them, and you're giving life to them from what you've experienced. And lastly, you spoke about having tunnel vision and just the need to balance relationship, realizing that the value isn't linked to the job,
Exactly.
but it is to the value comes in from the people you love and the people that love you.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's powerful. I thank you for sharing your story. I always ask my guests to end on a positive note and to either give some like lessons learned or to end by speaking life into someone else. So you have a choice.
Oh man. I think I'm lean for speaking life. That's kind of the that regardless of what life is throwing at you at the moment, that again, I'm a man of faith, and so for me, really, it's really about taking the time, like again, regardless of whatever the break is. Sometimes that's just a call to obedience, and it's a call to maybe sit down for a moment and get closer to the Word. And that nothing is insurmountable when you put your faith in the Lord and allow yourself open up to be able to come in, hopefully listen to and find and listen to his direction. Because again, it's done wonders for me, and just in those moments of despair, just being able to quiet and still oneself so that you can hear the word. And then what I mean by that is finding the moments in those quiet moments to literally turn to the word. And it's just, I don't know what it is, but it's the spirit where it's like a lot of times things will speak to you and jump out at you in those moments of despair. And so never lose hope, man. I think that's the, especially in this time where the world feels crazy. The world is like they are systematically trying to, they're just throwing things. If it's not one thing, it's another, right? And we have people are doing Gestapo tactics, and we have so much fear in the world. And I really encourage people. I think this is if for nothing else a time to really go back to basics, find the word, and I think there's solace, there's comfort in that. And with that, one of the things I love, my church community is a place that, like I said, I'm able to go and recharge and really get the strength to be able to kind of go out and be a positive force and try to be a positive force to to everyone around me, right? And so being able to kind of link arms with fellow believers is something that is, for me, restorative, is something that gives me hope. And so I think for anyone who may be lost, to maybe give that a try. Yeah.
I love that. How can people reach out to you if they're interested in maybe connecting, or if there's an open invite to your brotherhood or group?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're small but mighty. So and we're trying to kind of try not to be too overly corporate. So yeah, personally, it's probably just Instagram is probably the best way to reach out. I'm at The Progression on Instagram. And then that's probably like the best way to reach out, touch if you're interested in anything that I talked about.
Yeah. And lastly, I would like to thank the National Public Housing Museum for allowing us to use their fabulous facility.
Yeah, it's great in here.
Isn't it? They're really, really great. A great partner. But please also connect with us on our YouTube channel. If you have any feedback for Jesse and what he's working on, we would love to hear from you. So find us on our social media outlets and send us a message, because we want to tell the stories that you want to hear.
Engage, tap in, y'all.
Yeah. Well, thanks again, Jesse.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. This was great.
I'm glad you had a good time.
Absolutely.
I've always liked kind of learning people's origin stories, and I've seen you around, and this was like a window into your heart a little bit, and I love that the person that I meet in corporate settings, like, you have a really good heart. And
Thank you. No, this is amazing. Yeah, it's amazing how Chicago is like that. It's a big city, but a small town feel. So yeah, every time it's always been a really positive experience. And we have shared friends and shared love for people in our lives. So it's been a really amazing experience to kind of just sit down and share. Thank you for creating a platform for me to kind of share my thoughts on a couple of things and my POV. That's always nice. So thank you. This is great. And yeah, all the success with this. This is going to be amazing. Keep to it.
Until next time, use your crossroads to find